Ted Alcorn, welcome back to New Mexico in Focus.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Now, you've covered New Mexico's nation-leading alcohol-related mortality rate and the lack of movement on significant alcohol tax increases for years now. In 2022, you wrote a series called Blind Drunk, detailing its impacts on the state and the failed efforts to increase taxes. Why is this situation around alcohol so dire in our state in particular?
Alcohol has killed thousands of New Mexicans a year for the last few years, and it sets our state above and beyond anywhere else in the country. Our alcohol-related death rate is double the national rate, and it's due to a variety of causes, but most importantly, it's due to excessive drinking. And people who drink too heavily during their lifetimes can cause all sorts of damage to their bodies that reducing that drinking could really help prevent. Um, and that's focused lawmakers a lot on what to do about it. And the most basic is how can we deter people who are drinking too heavily from doing so? And the tool that is most adept for attacking this that public health scientists recommend is raising the price of alcohol. Everybody from anyone who's taken a basic economics course can appreciate that when prices go up, demand meets them at a lower point. And so a lot of the discussion in the legislature has been, can we raise the state's alcohol taxes in a way that would marginally reduce heavy drinking and save some of those lives? And right now, alcohol taxes in the state are at the lowest they've been in 30 years. They're 4 cents per drink for beer, 7 cents per drink for wine and liquor. And inflation eats them away each year. So for the last 30 years, when they haven't been updated, they've meant less and less compared to the relative size of alcohol.
Okay, so now that we understand the problem here in New Mexico, can you explain what happened this session?
Well, it's there's been a long time effort to increase alcohol to the state, going back to 2017. And in the past year, members of the Democratic caucus have really focused on trying to raise alcohol taxes as they exist now by as much as a quarter per drink, which would be a big relative increase. The challenge that they've run into has not been with Republican lawmakers, it's been within their own caucus because progressive lawmakers, including the Vice Chair Committee, Michaela Lara Cadena, have been focused over the last decade at making the tax code as a whole more progressive. That is to shift the costs, shift taxes away from people who are the poorest in the state and towards those who have more ability to pay. They've been very successful on their terms in this. State's tax code has become markedly more progressive, and there's been some impacts on poverty as a result. But they have looked at alcohol taxes through that same lens. And although alcohol taxes, the scientists would say, have a really progressive impact and that they have beneficial health impacts, particularly on poorer parts of the population, they're a consumption tax. And technically, they are regressive because they look bigger who has a smaller income. So what was interesting this session is that these two groups of lawmakers who had been bitterly contesting this issue last year, in the interim, under the auspices of or with the support of Speaker Javier Martinez, had come together, met for hours, and negotiated a hybrid approach, one that they could both get behind. It was essentially, instead of increasing alcohol taxes as they are by 25 cents a drink, they were going to impose a new alcohol sales tax on drinks. And a sales tax that's calculated by price means that more expensive alcohol gets raised, the price raised more, and cheaper alcohol gets raised less. So this is sort of a way of increasing alcohol taxes, but with a progressive sort of bent to it.
Okay. Now, in that original tax increase proposed and backed by advocates during this year's session, money raised would have gone directly to tribal governments to help in alcohol prevention and treatment. Now, people we spoke to weeks ago in the Roundhouse said that that would be huge for those tribes and pueblos who right now don't have the authority to spend that alcohol tax revenue as they please. Last month, our Gwyneth Dolan spoke with Cindy Sackelman, who's the co-founder of the New Mexico Tribal Behavioral Health Providers Association. Here's what she had to say about the impact that the money generated from that original proposal would have had for tribal communities.
It would give communities hope to not only address their local needs, because Pueblos, Navajo Nation, Apache tribes, they all look different. Their practices are different. Their approaches are different. Their land is different, right? So what they can actually implement in their community looks very different for all of the tribal communities. So this would mean being able to provide prevention services. Currently, our state does have prevention. But for over 20 years, prevention programs have received about $100,000 for an entire county for 20 years. So the amount of impact that has right now is limited because of the limited funding. But that means that tribes could then create prevention programs that work for them, treatment programs that work for them, a residential treatment program for tribal community members with cultural healing, with medicine men, with cultural, people always talk about culture being prevention. With cultural activities and reintegration into culture, there's such loss of language, such loss of cultural practices. This would allow for all of that to come back in.
Right, so all indications at the time that Gwyneth spoke with Cindy were that this was headed for success. What happened after that turned this on its head so quickly?
Well, the bill looked good in the first part of the session. It passed the health committee. It went to the tax committee. An alcohol tax fundamentally pits a couple of interest groups against each other. People who are going to benefit from it are people who are drinking excessively and who are going to see their consumption reduced. But that also has an impact on people who make their business by selling alcohol or making it. And keep in mind, in New Mexico, about $1 billion of alcohol gets sold each year. That's not an inconsiderable sum of money. And you could see this in a lineup of the speakers that are speaking in support and opposition to the bill. People who oppose the bill were entirely lobbyists for restaurants who were going to be particularly large tax increases under a 6% new sales tax on alcohol. But big international brewers like Anheuser-Busch, the local Brewers Guild. The supporters for the bill are people who speak for their patients, mostly clinicians, behavioral health providers like Cindy, who've seen the catastrophe that alcohol can play out on victims. So the committee, listening to those who were in more support, passed the bill, and it looked like it was headed towards the House floor when all of a sudden it was re-referred back to the same committee. And that's a little bit unusual, and it also posed a problem for this bill because on its first passage through, a couple of Democrats had been conspicuously absent. Patty Lundstrom, who represents parts of McKinley County, which is very alcohol affected, but who has also been more of a moderate or even a conservative voice when it comes to policies in the Democratic caucus, and Doreen Gallegos, who has voiced skepticism about alcohol taxes before. And when the bill came back, they were going to get to vote on it. And so it was discussed for an amendment in the second hearing there. And when they called the votes, Doreen and Patty both voted against the bill, joining the Republicans. And when every vote was called, it was 6-6, which meant under the rules there that it is tabled and dead. But our reporting into why it got those no votes, I think, is also revealing, because Speaker Martinez has always been very protective of his caucus. He says financial contributions to legislators should never be considered as, in determining their votes. He doesn't think that they're relevant. But when we look at the amount of money that the alcohol industry spends lobbying, wining and dining legislators in New Mexico, it's concentrated on this committee. And specifically, the 3 House members who have received the most money from the alcohol industry in the last 4 years are on this committee. And they were Patty Lundstrom, Doreen Gallegos, and Speaker Martinez. And in total, they together have taken more than $100,000 from the alcohol industry in the last 4 years. And Doreen Gallegos is married to a lobbyist who is lobbying against this bill in front of that very committee.
Let me cut in real quick, though. Speaking of House Speaker Martinez receiving the most money from the alcohol industry, he did vote for the bill that advocates had backed originally. And his quote that you referenced in your story is, "Your vote on this bill or any other bill should not be equated to some sort of ulterior motive. I have zero patience for that, and I don't care who does it." So how should voters interpret this? The fact that he voted for the bill that the lobby was opposed to, but then may have brought this back. How can voters read the influence of lobbyists and whether or not these lawmakers are truly representing the interests of voters?
Well, I'm not one to interpret or offer an interpretation of other people's intentions, but we just look at the facts. And I think the big corporations that give money to legislators don't do it as a hobby. They do it for a reason, because it earns them contact with and goodwill from those legislators. And I guarantee the alcohol industry is not spending hundreds of $1,000s a year in New Mexico as a form of welfare payment. And when we look at the no votes on this bill, it coincides with a group of lawmakers who have, at the very least, an apparent conflict of interest. And you don't have to take my word for it either. The vice chair of the committee, Representative Michaela Lara Cadena, was so incensed after this loss that exactly 1 hour later, she left that tax hearing room and she stepped into a hearing room on the Senate side where a bill was being heard about lobbying transparency. And she gave public comment and said that today in her committee room, a bill had been voted down with 2 people who had a financial stake in the outcome of that bill. And she thought that at the very least, they should disclose that, if not recuse themselves from it. So certainly it's not a sentiment that is, is something that we've come up with. It's a sentiment that is shared amongst colleagues there.